I have to go back to the last tape a little bit where I said that many times as a child I remember the snows being so deep that they reached halfway up the windows and doors. We couldn't get out without first digging paths to the barns and chicken coops, also to the outdoor privy. The drifts would be so high that when a path was made through them, we couldn't be seen running along them. It was fun too, but so confining. Only the needed chores were done, and of course, schools were closed for long periods of time because no one could get there. Even as late as when I was a teacher traveling to Gilead, there were days when the blizzard snows kept me home, days at a time. We had to make the lost school days up at the end of the year in June. I must add here that we, the children, enjoyed it after months of the blizzards. As I've said, the blizzards were really, really terrible. How the winds howled and blew. Someone always had to go out for the wood, which was on a huge pile outdoors. And believe me, we burnt the wood constantly in the 2 stoves, day and night. Our house was located at the end of a long lane, perhaps 2 city blocks long, and that had to be cleared wide enough for the horse sleighs or the sledges to get through to the main road. Even that is the main road, wasn't always cleared for travel. The lane had fences, that is our lane, had fences on either side, so the drifts formed between them unmercifully. At those times, my father opened the gates of the adjoining fields, and we drove through them until the 10 or 12 or even 15-foot drifts were cut through in the lane. It was fun in a way, because the sleighs had bells and the horses had bells, so when we traveled, the bells jingled and jangled. The song Dashing Through the Snow and Jingle Bells were a favorite for us, and a lot of fun, and we sang them many, many times. You see, when I was small, there were no paved roads in our area, so we even drove to town and to church in a horse-drawn sleigh. The Sunday go-to-church sleigh was light, and there was plenty of room on it. How we bundled up, blankets, quilts, even hot bricks were wrapped up as heaters. Then they were placed between the feet. That was rural living. In the early 1900s and even into the 1930s. This cannot be duplicated in our areas now, these years. Even though it was hard, it had its pleasures, and I'm glad I lived through them. My children can never experience these pleasures, the pleasures of this type of living that we had when we were children. You can see now why we had to be prepared for such instances by stocking up on foods and grains for both the animals and the family. Sometimes no one went to the city for a month, even longer. We couldn't attend church services every Sunday either. But when we could, we jingled along in the horse-drawn sleigh. The sledge was used only on the farm or in going from neighbor to neighbor for a heavier purpose. that sledge had broad, heavy runners rather than fine steel ones that the sleigh had. When I was teaching in Salem in 1932, one of the families delivered their children on such a sledge. It was drawn by 2 horses. The names of this family were the Stula children. There was no town transportation for anyone, no matter how far they had to travel to get to school. Interestingly enough, rarely did the children come late to school. In speaking of blizzards and heavy snowstorms, I must mention the one bad one we had. I believe it was in 1933, perhaps 1934. I was then teaching in Salem at the West Road School. It was the month of February. I was correcting papers and preparing my lessons for the following school day when I heard knocking on the back door. Everyone else, my brother Joe, my brother Bruno, my sister-in-law Bina, were asleep. I was the only one awake. It was about 10 p.m., maybe later. There were no TVs then to keep anyone up late. Furthermore, we weren't accustomed to staying up late. Well, I had my back to the door and was afraid to turn around to see who was knocking on the door. Again, the knocking. "Miss," someone called. I turned around, and there through the window in the door was a man, red-faced from the cold and shivering. I didn't open the door immediately, but asked him what he wanted at such a late hour. He then explained to me that he was out of gas a distance down the road. He was headed for Hartford and had a weather report that a severe snowstorm was heading that way. Could he possibly get some gas just to take him to some gas station, and that he would appreciate the assist very, very much. I was so very frightened, but I could see that he was desperate, so I called my brother Joe, who was sound asleep. He also questioned the man in detail, finding out that he was a Ritz cracker salesman and feared being stranded. My brother Joe went out with a lantern and to his car, where he siphoned a few gallons of gas. The man was very grateful. I guess he must have paid him. But not only did he give him money, he also gave him a 20-pound box of Ritz crackers. Well, I'll never know whether or not he reached his destination that night, or whether or not he was able to find an open gas station. But one thing I am sure of was that he was right. By morning, the snow was a few feet deep, and the blizzard was raging. No one could move out of the house without shoveling and shoveling and shoveling. But as soon as a path was made, it was covered with drifts. This continued for several days. Drifts piled up along the main highway, now called Route 85, that's going from New London to Hartford. Now the drifts were so high, clear up to the telephone lines. Not everywhere, but here and there, preventing any traffic. Every available man in town came to the rescue and shoveled away to clear the roads. Needless to say, we had a 2-week winter vacation from school, while crews worked constantly, day and night. The bus running from New London to Hartford was not running for days and days, although the main highway received first preference in clearing it. The side roads had to wait. The cracker salesman was right. I'm glad we helped him out with the gas, but I can tell you we were tired of eating Ritz crackers. We had had our fill of Ritz crackers and vowed we wouldn't eat another Ritz cracker for years and years. We ate crackers in soup, we ate crackers as crackers, we ate crackers with butter, we ate crackers with jam, we had crackers for dessert. I'm telling you, we were tired of crackers. Now I want to correct a little statement I made. I mentioned the date 1932. I believe that was in 1933 because I started teaching in the fall of 29 in Gilead, and I was there for 4 years. So I had to have started Salem in 1933 in the fall. Well, being that I was responsible, or I felt this great big responsibility for the children's education, I always had it on my mind that I had to do my utmost to get to my school, regardless of the weather conditions, or for that matter, even how I felt. One particular day when I was teaching in Gilead, and the main highway was cleared, so I felt, well, I have to go. I drove off very confident that when I reached Hebron, I knew that I could get to my school, so I thought. Well, I did reach the center of Hebron, where I had to turn off to get to Gilead. How foolish I was. But young people can try to do impossible things, and I was young then. I looked toward the uncleared snow, but try I must, I thought. I also knew that if I didn't try, I would never know whether or not I'd make it. So, head on I went, and of course I got stuck in the snow and couldn't move backwards or forwards. I had to sit there quite a while until someone came along to pull me out. In fact, I think I was pushed out by several farmers. They told me to go home, which of course I did. I should not have ventured out in the first place. Then, too, I had a few days off, which of course had to be made up in June. Those were the days.